Record. All right, Ben Scott from STC Fit. Thank you very much for joining us. 9 years in the industry now as a powerlifting coach. We're focusing on body comp and fat loss too. Also, you run an awesome podcast, STC Fit Learning, with your business partner, Jason. For anyone who hasn't caught that podcast, I highly recommend. There's 113 episodes. I've just been working my way backwards now. And before I kick over to you, Ben, I've got something to admit. I now realize where the name Coach's Corner came from.
Yeah.
I think I stole it from you.
That's awesome.
I go, where did that name come to me? It was like subliminal. And then I go, oh, I saw one you did with Jamie Smith, Jordan Shallow, and Will Crozier, and it was called Coach's Corner. And I'm like, I've stolen it straight off him, and now I've got him here. So I find that pretty funny.
Yeah, we actually, when we first launched the podcast, so we did like 30 episodes back in like 2015.
Yeah.
So when you said like you're working backwards, I was like, oh, good. Don't like start from episode 1 and work forwards because they're terrible. The audios, we just literally recorded it on the phone. That's like so bad. Anyway, like that was originally it was called Coach's Corner because there was 4 of us.
Yeah.
So we kind of got rid of it and just moved to the podcast. And then we're like, well, if we're going to have heaps of coaches on to chat, then we'll bring the name back. And then I saw you called it the same thing. I was like, it's hilarious. Good.
It is a copycat industry, isn't it?
That's it. You can't own anything in the fitness space.
Very true. So, mate, coming into the industry, who was your biggest influence? What shaped your training model, your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like you said at the start, there, like 9 years in the industry. I've only really been into like powerlifting the last probably 3 to 4 years. So I started out as just like a Gen Pop trainer at a Good Life Health Club. Started off, I was actually selling memberships, and Jace, who you mentioned, the co-host on the podcast, business partner. He was my PT at the time. I was sort of like jack of management, had done my PT course. I'm like, let's jump over there. So at that time, like obviously Facebook was around, but there wasn't like a fitness community yet. I hear of like the OGs talking about like forums and all that sort of stuff. We never kind of tapped into them. It was just us in the gym, and we were pretty competitive, and we just wanted to be the best where we were. So we leveled each other up a lot. And then I think the first time I ever looked outside the gym that we were working in was probably 2-3 years in. I bought a 12-month program off Ben Pekulski. And that was kind of, all right, the world of fitness and training is bigger than Good Life in Point Cook.
Yeah.
So like he kind of spun me off to big names like obviously down the Poliquin road, and then guys like Phil Lerney, Brett Contreras, Brad Schoenfeld, those types of dudes then like started to pick up who they were. Lane Norton was just starting to come out on YouTube and started to, pay attention to all those big names that are still OGs now.
Yeah. Oh, great. There are some big hitters in there for sure. So how would you define how your training model has evolved from when you started out coaching at Good Life and training under Jason, and now where you're running how many clients do you manage online weekly now? So COVID and during COVID.
Yeah. So personally, I try and sit around 30.
Yep.
Just with the other stuff we do, 30 is a pretty sweet spot for me, just in terms of like being able to give enough to them, not overstress myself. So that's pretty standard for me now. In terms of how it's evolved, like I said, initially I was working with people that really like clean up your diet, move, and you're going to get the outcome you want. As things evolved, we started like the podcast, putting out a bit more content. I actually moved gyms a couple of times. Started to get into strength training myself, and my clientele just changed over that period as well. So I started to get clients who were a little bit more serious, clients with more serious goals, eventually starting to like really niche down into the people that I work with now. That sort of happened organically. It's just like girls who want to be really strong and look great in a bikini at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like everything sort of evolved from there. And then 4 years ago now, we started like an in-house mentorship program with trainers that worked for us. So at that point, it was like, I had to stop going off intuition because I had to teach other people what I did. So that was huge for me. Like we were just talking about Pat's course, like actually writing down what your training model is.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, why did you make that decision? Why is that in there in your programming? Why is that in nutrition and stuff? So it's just having to put that out and teach somebody else the strategies and stuff that I was using evolved everything really quickly. Because sometimes you'd write down stuff and just go, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
So let's address that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the combination of those two things, the clients and then getting into the education space, probably the biggest influences on like my training model and how it's evolved. And yeah, I guess like moving into a more niche clientele as well.
Yeah. So I want to explore that with moving into a niche clientele. I'm going to steal a quote that you've listed on your profile. I want to work with those who want to be and look strong as fuck. So you obviously set high expectations and high standards of your clients from the get-go. How do you go about communicating these standards to them? And people now come to you because they know like you're the guy to come to if they want to be strong, lean, and get on stage or compete.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I've got a really good friend of mine. She's your typical, like, goes to the gym a few times a week, follows a program, has a couple of kids, like just wants to stay in shape and healthy. And I tend to send her my marketing. And then if she sends it back and it's like, that's way too much, I'm like, sweet, we're on par with where we need to be. So yeah, it's like you get to a point where for me, it was just a time where I was like, I had too much knowledge to just kind of play in the fat loss space. And I wanted to kind of test it. And every time you get like that slightly better athlete, you had to learn a little bit more. And I was at a point where it's like, well, naturally my market is growing this way. So I just sort of made the decision that that's where I was going to head. And I think the other part of that too was going online. I think online is so noisy that if you don't have a thing, it's really challenging. Like trying to be a fat loss coach on like, and be online, I feel like it'd be a really challenging thing to do. Because there's so many of them, it's so generic. Whereas like, it's really, if you go on my profile, it's like, it's super clear. I train girls between 20 and 35 that want to be strong and lean. And there's no questions asked. So if you come to my page and you're not that person, you're probably not going to be interested.
Yeah.
And if you open up that lead page that says like, if you want to look and be strong as fuck and that offends you, then you're probably not the right person to work with me anyway. And I'm pretty comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great because that's where a lot of young coaches and myself included in this over my journey I've been in the industry 7 years now, 6 years. I kind of jump around and go, oh, who's my current target market? And I heard a really good term the other week, niche cycling. And I feel like I'm someone who goes through niche cycling. I'll go after juniors and I'll go after rehab. And I go, you know what? I enjoy just working with junior athletes and return to sports stuff. So that's going to be me and I'm happy with that. And a lot of young coaches come and ask me the question like, how do I grow a clientele base? What should I do? Should I focus on one particular market? What would you say to young coaches in your mentorship program that you run when they ask this question? What's the advice you give them there?
Yeah, I guess looking at the context of like yourself, and I don't know about the guys that are watching, whether they're like just PTs, big box sort of thing, or in that more strength conditioning sort of realm. If my, I guess, attitude is a little bit old school and just that if you're cutting your teeth with everyone, like the first 12 months, even longer, I think just train everyone you can get your hands on. If you can teach someone who hasn't exercised since they were 14 years old, who's now 30 to squat, when you get that person that's strong and can move well, you'll be way better at coaching it. Because there's more to coaching somebody than just like knowing what a squat should look like. It's communication, it's empathy, it's all those things as well. So I think working with the broadest range of people you can initially is really, really valuable. What I did was, I guess, my niche evolved by itself based on the gym I was working in, the results, who I was getting results with. I plugged into a couple of like competitions with the bikini girls. It's sort of that all just spun off from there. So it was like you got a couple of girls lean and they were also strong, and then other people in that demographic were like, oh, what are you doing? I want to find out what that is. But while I was working in the gym, I still definitely had like Gen Pop people. I had males. I had also like a way broader spectrum of clients. But then moving online, it's way more refined now. It's probably like, I would say 90 to 95% of my clientele fit within that niche. The other option, I guess, is like particularly in a, I guess more S&C sort of thing where you don't have access to 4,000 members that you could just pick up and call in a big box gym like I did. It's funny, like most people want to work with the idea of like people like them often. But I think it's important to have a think about, okay, who do you actually work the best with and who do you get the best results with and what fulfills you the most? So yeah, it's interesting. Like I heard Thomas Lilly actually say on his podcast recently about he used to market to powerlifters and then he realized he already had them all in his area. And he was like, so I actually had to start marketing to people who were interested in strength training to then turn them into powerlifters. And that's, I guess, where I see is like people come to me kind of interested in strength. And it's like, hey, did you know if you competed, like you'd be at least state, if not national level? And they're like, oh, fuck, we weren't even trying yet. It's like, yeah. So it kind of evolves that way. So yeah, just having a think about who you actually enjoy training, who resonates with you from a personality standpoint as well, and putting lots of personality into your marketing. Like you said, like not everyone's going to respond to, if you want to look and be strong as fuck, like that, not everyone resonates with that. So putting personality into your content, everything you put out, social media, stories, all that stuff.
I love what you're saying there. And it does come down to job satisfaction. Like train who you want to train, who you're going to enjoy to train, because it's going to make a massive difference. So with your decision to jump online, was that a life balance, or you just wanted a different environment to being in the gym for so long? And how do you go about balancing life between running a mentorship, running a podcast, running online coaching, living a life and training as well?
Yeah. So I guess like, how do I manage it? I'll go through the online stuff first. Like how I went about that was pretty much, I knew that the hybrid model was where we needed to be. Just knew that was going to be something that the fitness industry needed. So there was an online element. It was way more effective to do online check-ins than try and get through everything in a session. Then when I was with people, we trained. So it was like an evolution of that. I probably built that over 3 years, I think, that I was playing with that until the point where I was just like, okay, I'm just watching my clients now. They don't actually need me to be here. Mm-hmm. And that when I was like, all right, it's time to make the jump now. And alongside that, we had a lot of stuff going on in the back end. So we were launching what's currently called the Academy, which is essentially a mentorship program. We've got 3 coaches, or actually a total of 6 coaches in STC Fit as well. We're trying one day, once COVID goes away, to open a facility, podcast, all that sort of stuff. So it's like this time in the gym now is actually probably holding me back.
Yeah.
And something I've been, I guess, teaching our guys a lot of lays. When you get to a point where you've got a full book, I think when you're just starting out, it's like everything you should do should be, and this is like something I learned from sales, you're either in front of someone or you're trying to be in front of someone to get them to work with you. That's like, you live and breathe that until you've got a full book. Once you've got a full book, then it's like, is what I'm doing now creating compound interest? So I think we're going to talk about later in the chat, like if you can actually sustain this as a career for a long period of time.
Yeah.
It's starting to think like, okay, how much return doing an hour face-to-face with someone? How else could I spend that hour? Could I still service that client and get them a similar, or if not the same or better even outcome sometimes? And then what could I do with that time? So the STC Fit mantra, our vision is 1 million outcomes by 2030. I can't do that in the gym. I got to be on stuff like this. I've got to mentor other guys. I've got to get online so I can take more clients and put out more stuff. So the compound interest return is like, I'm actually going back to doing some face-to-face because I believe there's some compound interest in being able to still work tangibly with people and adjust, particularly in powerlifting, like being able to tweak form and all that sort of stuff, and just keep your eye on. But yeah, that was the shift for me in terms of like balancing life. We talk about this quite a lot. We, I guess, went through a phase where our position on it was just kind of fuck balance. Like no one's ever been successful with a balanced life. I've kind of changed how I word that now. So I think balance is identifying the areas in your life you need to direct energy, and then being aware of how much energy you need to direct to each one. And those things will change over time. So if I look at my life and think, okay, so I've got, like you said, let's just say like the STC Fit hat. And then I've got Ben Scott strength coaching hat. Then I've got relationships, friendships, competitive powerlifting, myself, my dog. Like there's a few things that I need to kind of consider there. So it's like, all right, comp prep comes around, sweet, 12 weeks out, director's call, righto guys, the next 12 weeks, I'm doing what I need to do. And outside of that, there's probably not a lot going on because I'm probably going to be in the gym 3 hours a day. The rest of the time I'm going to want to be asleep. So it's like
the vertical integration model of life.
Yeah, that's it. So it's like, okay, so once comps recovered, it's like, all right, so the next 3 to 4 months is like all business, 100%, let's go. Then there's like, okay, I know I need to go away probably every 6 months. Otherwise I go mental and or burnout. And I'm way more effective if I do that. So then it's like, that's in terms of a relationship thing. It's like, all right, that happens. And when that holiday moment comes around, it's like, that's my focus, is those other things in my life. So yeah, I think communication with particularly like intimate relationships, even family and friends though, just so people have an understanding of like, hey, I'm doing this. And people you work with, clients, which I think we'll talk about later, just in terms of like, just let your clients know like, hey, you guys, I'm competing. I might be under a little bit of pressure. If I miss anything, just let me know.
Yeah.
Like you kind of putting it out there that like, hey, I'm a human, I might fuck up, rather than trying to pretend you're going to have everything on lock. Making the people around you aware of where you're at, I think reduces anxiety, because I think where the question comes from, and like, how do you maintain balance? It's like people end up in a position where they're so overwhelmed and anxious about all this shit that they have to do that becomes a problem.
Yeah, and then
so
they get it done.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of like self-awareness that like it's actually okay that maybe you're, if you've just started as a coach, maybe your training does take a backseat for the first 3 to 6 months. It's like you got rent to pay. Like that's your workouts might be 3 to 4 days a week for an hour instead of 2 hours, 5 days a week. Like that might be something that has to happen. Being conscious of that and making that decision and being self-aware of it makes a huge difference into the anxiety that'll give you at the end of the week. You're not feeling like a failure because you've actually consciously thought about it and gone, you know what? I actually can't facilitate both of those things right now.
Yeah. I love all the points you made there. And especially for any young coaches coming into the industry, I think it's critical that they heed this advice from people who've been through the cycle, because it is a vicious cycle being an S&C coach, really. Like split shifts, you sacrifice yourself before others, always food, training, there's plenty going on. Like a lot of people I went to school with or uni with, they think, oh, your job sounds bloody awesome. And guess what? Yeah, it is awesome. I love my job.
Yeah.
But like all you do is stand around all day. And I go, yeah, but that's tiring. Like
yeah.
it's
then you
actually hard work.
You have a break and just play PlayStation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's draining. Like, we are trying to give people skills to take control of their own lives, but as well, being mostly in S&C, you're working for yourself. Like you're your own business. What steps did you take to develop STC Fit into what it is today, and how? What's a piece of business advice you'd give young coaches?
Yeah, so I obviously got your questions before we started, and I literally all I wrote was run a fucking business.
Yeah.
And I think literally that if you just remind yourself of that every day for your first like 6 to 24 months,
Yeah.
it's just like like you said, a lot of people kind of get into this industry because they like working with people, they like training, they like that side of it. But we forget that, like you said, we're self-employed. This is, it's like, it's no different to old mate down the road who owns a coffee shop. Like, there's bills to pay. There's long-term implications of this stuff. Like, it only takes a minute to have a look around and go, all right, so how many, obviously I'm more familiar with the personal training space than specifically S&C. You probably have a better answer to this, but like, how many S&C coaches are there that are between like 28 and 40?
Yeah, it drops off.
Yeah, compared to like 18 and 25, there's heaps. And then maybe there's people who have come back like once they've done their career thing. Yeah. It's like, that's because, I would like to buy a house or a car or get married or have a kid or whatever, and I haven't managed anything correctly. I don't have a reliable income. I don't have systems in place that allow me to live a lifestyle that's conducive to being also an adult outside of your job. That at the end of the day means that people leave the industry before maybe they even want to or should, just because they haven't put themselves in good positions.
Yeah, it's something that I've noticed a lot with colleagues that I started with. A lot of the guys I started working around or with, they're not in the industry anymore. They're in sales, or they're doing something completely different because they hit that burnout point and they didn't quite set themselves up right from the start. And I'm going to move into this question. Is PT, S&C, is working in the health and fitness industry a lifelong career?
I hope so.
How do we make it?
I'm pretty screwed if it's not, because I'm like pretty hard committed right now. Look, I think, like I said, if you run it as a business, 100%.
Yeah.
Then it's going to come down to the individual. So like, I have an issue with sitting still. So like, just churning sessions out over and over again wasn't enough for me. I wanted to do other stuff.
Yeah.
So there's always been things for me to learn and grow and challenge and kind of evolve through. I love teaching. All of that has always been kind of part of who I am. So for me, it was just like, okay, what's the next challenge? What's the next thing? Well, obviously, like I said, we'll obviously open a facility at some point when the world stops trying to end. So there's always something for me that I guess will give us a challenge to do.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, like I don't want to be that guy, but out of 9 years, I reckon 8 of them I've done 6 figures.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm a Cert 4, like there's not.
That can happen. That it's good. You're setting a standard, like.
Yeah. And that's not, again, it's not here to like blow smoke up my own ass or anything like that. But we've had a lot of trainers come through and do the same thing because they put the systems in place and they run the business. At the end of the day, for me, it's not about the money. Like, that 1 million outcomes is number one for me, but it's a pretty good way to keep score. And the thing is, you can't help anyone if you can't pay your rent. Like, if you're out of the industry, you're not helping anyone anymore. So I think there needs to be a bit of responsibility. A good way maybe to look at it, it sounds a bit harsh, is just like, by not taking care of the business side of things, you're being selfish if your goal is to help people, because it will drive you out of the industry sooner than you need to if you don't have that stuff kind of sorted out.
Absolutely. And I've heeded that advice recently because I was terrible with the business side of things and more the back end stuff, like keeping check of all my accounts and what's coming in, what's going out. And I just looked at my books and go, what am I doing? Like,
yeah,
I'm working for this business. It's not me solely. Like, so it's a big thing to take check of. Absolutely. Well, you spoke about ongoing education. What's one of the most valuable courses or ongoing education seminars that you've done throughout your years? Are any that fly off the top of the head?
Interesting. The course that changed my trajectory as a coach, I actually wouldn't want to promote because I don't like it, but I spent a lot of money on it and I was forced, I guess, to apply a lot of stuff. So it's where I learned to squat, bench, deadlift. And I was like, hey, this is pretty fucking cool. Like, I get to go to the gym and decide if I'm stronger rather than wake up in the morning, because I was obviously in the bodybuilding space before that. Well, like, definitely bunny years, 75 kilos, thought I was jacked bodybuilding. Getting up in the morning, looking in the mirror and going like, oh, my self-worth is based on like how lean I am or how jacked I am or whatever, which I was never really either. So I was definitely drawn to that. To be honest, I think like particularly in the powerlifting space now, what probably sets me apart from a lot of other coaches is having that hypertrophy background. So spending 12 months following BPAC's programs, which came with videos and all that sort of stuff. So like my eye for detail comes from that, which transitioned over really nicely into looking at the big three. I worked with Jordan Shallow for a prep as well and learned a ton off him. And obviously like he's got heaps and heaps of free resources out there as well. Good seminars. Phil Lerney came out to Australia years and years ago, and he was one to just put a little bit on, just like the most of the weekend was about nutrition and training, but there was just enough just to be like, you also need to run a business. Like, just remember that. So that was definitely good. Respect him a lot. They're probably the main ones. Brilliant. Yeah, and actually, because I have the book sitting here, something that's probably undervalued. No offense to you guys in the strength conditioning world, but I think a lot of you, because you are lucky enough to work with athletes, it's sort of like expected. If you tell them what to do, they'll do it. We actually did a Cert 4 in mindset coaching, which sounds super woo-woo, and I get it. It's very like fluffy. But just the ability to communicate with people from that point on, both reducing stress of like taking on everyone else's shit all week, like doing 50 PT sessions and getting end of the week and just like, I don't want to see another human for 3 days until I go back to work on Monday. Being able to deal with that a lot better, getting clients to take ownership, structuring your conversations better so you're not like a dictator, you're working with people a lot more. In terms of coaching and getting outcomes for people, that's probably actually number one.
Yeah. I resonate with that, mate. Language is super important. In any scope, in whoever you're working with, wherever you're coaching, I think language is the key. And mindset and learning to communicate with people and I guess read people and ask the right questions is critical. You jumped on to my next question there. What's a book or an education, or what's a book that you would recommend young coaches, trainers to read? What's something that was a stone pillar in your development?
Okay. One that I did really early that just caught me at a really good time was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which introduced the 10,000 hour rule, which at the time, I was like, all right, well, if it's that means working full time for 4 years, I'm gonna do that in 3. So, that was kind of my attitude towards that, but it's a really good book. Nowadays, I guess obviously we're talking about business and stuff a lot, and that's sort of the space I'm working with most coaches now, and systems and things like that. Dan Priestley has 2 books that'll change how you view your marketing side of things, which I think is probably one of the biggest sticking points for a lot of us. One's called Key Person of Influence, sorry. And then the other one is called Oversubscribed.
I've written that name down for myself. I haven't.
Yeah. So you can actually get Key Person of Influence for free if you go on the Dent website and take the Key Person of Influence test. They'll send you the book for free. I got it in like 2 days or something. Really, really good. I think if you're a bit more established, Key Person of Influence, if you're just starting out, the concepts from Oversubscribed are really valuable just to how to apply your systems and stuff as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Great insight there into some ongoing education and some advice. Now let's dive into some of the mistakes we've made, because we've all made plenty of them. What are some ideologies you pertained earlier in your career that have changed or evolved? Some key mistakes that you would encourage other young trainers and coaches, go out and make these mistakes. And then what's a mistake that you would say, learn from what I did and probably don't go down this road?
Yeah, I did mention the P word earlier, Mr. Like, big respects to Charles Poliquin, but some of his methods later on in his career, when I was early in my career, were a bit interesting, particularly on the nutrition side of things. So I think in terms of like the biggest mistakes I made was I was applying that method, and I would have sat here and argued with you for an hour if you told me I was wrong. Now I look back at it now, I'm like, 80% of what I was saying, I didn't actually understand. I was just regurgitating, and B, isn't accurate or necessary. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, is like being a young coach, thinking I kind of knew. It's like that circle of knowledge thing. Like the bigger your circle of knowledge gets, the bigger the external view you have of what you actually don't know. So that's probably the biggest thing I reflect back on, which I try and keep close to myself now, is like, I'm totally willing to be wrong about everything at any time. Like if someone turns around and says, hey, that method you use for like rep and reserve has actually been shown to be crap, it's like, oh, okay, let's discuss that. Like that's fine. Mistakes that I made that I'd encourage other people to make as well. This one was kind of a tough one, because my job now is basically to teach people how not to make all the mistakes that I did. But I think the biggest one is like, just try shit. Just try different systems, try different programming models, try different marketing strategies, try different resources, try offering different services here and there to your clients, even just like beta test stuff with like particular clients. Just throw it out there and see what sticks. And then over time, you'll just build, you'll know that worked, that didn't, rather than just kind of like staying in this narrow lane. The more mistakes you make in that space, the more you'll actually know. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one. Biggest mistake I made that others can learn from. Overworking, undercharging would be one of them. So like I said, like
awesome. that. I want you to, let's dive into this. This is good.
Yeah. So I think back in the day, I was about, so one session was $50. 2 sessions, I think, was like 79, and then 3 sessions a week was like 99.
Crazy.
It's insane. Yeah. Insane. So yeah, I think, I probably did that for 3-4 years, maybe. Like service, to be fair, definitely wasn't what it was now, but it was still like too low. And yeah, I was definitely doing at times 55, 30-minute sessions a week. And then wondering why, like I said, I didn't want a human on the weekend anymore. And then I remember being the first person in my club to charge $60 for 30 minutes. And everyone was like, you can't fucking do that. That's way too expensive. And then within 3 months, the whole club, that was the standard rate, because it was like, yeah, if you actually offer a service, people will do that. So that's definitely one of them. I think coming back to what we said earlier, once you've got a full book, just reminding yourself, like, or asking that question of like, does this provide me compounding interest throughout like the rest of my career? That's actually a really good book too. I couldn't tell you who wrote it, but I have it on my Audible accounts, called Compounding Interest. It goes into considering things like that when you're making decisions in business. The other one, which I think is the number one killer of fitness professionals, I guess, is working in fear of the client. So every decision they make seems to be based off what they think the client might do, rather than positioning yourself as the expert and as the authority and as someone who's been hired to deliver an outcome. And sort of working, backwards from there. So instead of telling your client something, you're sort of asking, and you're not getting the buy-in, you're not getting the authority and stuff that you want. Even things like, we have a pretty solid client agreement when people sign up. It's like, if you don't give 24 hours notice, you don't get your session back and you still pay. Yeah. If I go on holidays, we do make-up sessions before and after, and you still pay. Like you talked about earlier, like, is this a long-term sustainable career? If you can run a business that way, and you can set yourself as an authority inside that space. And that just comes with confidence and communication, setting expectations that what you expect from the client, what the client can expect from you from the start. And then it's just a prescription mentality from then on out. Like, it's you don't imagine ringing like your physio and them saying like, oh, I've only really got 6 p.m. And they're like, oh, nah, I just like, I need to do 7. So no, you make 6 work because I'm busy and I've got to come. And I think we've all had, if you're a coach, I hope you've had a coach at some point, and just like put yourself in the client shoes yourself sometimes. Like where recently my coach put their prices up and they're like, oh, you guys will just need to fill out this form. This is what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. So there was no hesitation whatsoever. I was just like, yeah, sure. Like that's normally what happens. Whereas I think younger PTs don't have the confidence to do that, and they're a little bit scared that a client might leave, which sometimes will actually push clients away.
Yeah. And look, it's going to happen. Clients leaving, clients firing you, or even
Vice versa.
You firing clients. Like, have you ever had to go about the tact of, all right, maybe I'm not the best suited coach to you, and how do you go about telling the client that because they don't work with your personality, or they're just maybe it's not going to be a good relationship going forward, and you want the best outcome always for this client, so you think, work with this person instead.
Yeah, it's funny, both within coaching trainers and coaching like clients, the same thing usually happens. Like they know already, and they sort of like when that conversation's coming, they kind of check out anyway. I have done it a couple of times where I've just gone like, this isn't working. Which, to be honest, both of them actually both times that I've done it, they've actually turned around and sort of changed their behavior a little bit. But I've also done it a lot in consults. It's probably where I've done it the most. Just like, look, I don't think like people coming in that are sort of maybe too new to training for the system that I have. And it's like, I would have to totally rearrange my system to work for you. And to be honest, you're probably better spending the money you would have spent with me with a face-to-face PT right now.
Yeah.
Like go and do that in 6 to 12 months. If you want to work together, hit me up and we'll go from there. Again, it just comes from confidence of knowing who and what you want to work with. I actually spoke to Jace in the last couple of weeks. His message, he's like, you sign up a client and you just know they're going to be trouble from day one. Like, yeah. Yep.
We've all had them. Absolutely. We've all had them. So we're going to chat now about the importance of building a reputation and how you've gone about, like you've touched on a little bit, how you've gone about building a reputation that now you're a coach that you don't even have to step foot in a gym. You get clients coming to you regularly because you have defined a little niche in the market of the health and fitness world for yourself. Like, how have you gone about building that reputation over the years?
Yeah, it's a real interesting one. Hey, like the first note I wrote on this was just like, stop trying to be famous. I think that is, like you said, it says down here, like with social media and stuff, how that's influenced it. I think people are looking for that more than they're actually looking for clients. It's like how many followers you have matters more than how many clients you have. It's like not necessarily. Like I don't think I have, like I'd kill for a swipe up just so I could put like today's event, swipe up, here's the Zoom link, people that, rather than just like DM. It's like I got a full book of clients at the same time. So it doesn't matter. Do I need to buy another 7,000 followers so I look legit? I don't know. Like I said, my book's full. In terms of building a reputation, results are number one. Hey, like I think that's what we forget. Like results at the end of the day are gonna dictate what happens in your next 3 to 6 months. Like if you're getting results with your current crop, that's going to reflect 3 to 6 months from now in who's coming through. For me, I sort of made the choice that like, okay, it's time for us we decided on the 1 million outcomes by 2030 idea, got into that key person of influence book and was like, okay, what are the holes I don't have? And I decided at the start of the year that one of my main goals was to start getting invited to speak elsewhere. Because before that, we were just pretty internal. Like you said, we've got 130 episodes. We just kind of do our own stuff. We bring people on we like when we want to. It's never got anything to do with like how big their following is or anything like that. It's just like, hey, this person's smart. I want to talk to them about this. So that's always been our goal. But it was like, okay, I need to put myself in a position where people are starting to look at me as an authority or us as a brand as an authority to achieve that sort of outcome, that's where we need to be at. And I felt like we were in a position where we had enough to share that we could influence enough people and provide enough value to people to put ourselves in that position. So it was like articles started coming out, YouTube videos started coming out. And I think this is probably the fourth, I guess, like external publication sort of thing that I've personally been on in the last, I guess, 4 months.
Mm.
So it's just like that decision to do that has helped. But all of what I did at the start was in the gym. Like I'm back living in Point Cook now, actually, but if you go into Good Life Point Cook, we've had some sort of STC Fit influence in there for 9 years, I guess. Like we've still got 3 PTs in there. Everyone knows that name inside that gym. I've heard a lot of like the big dogs sort of say, get famous in your hometown first. So get famous in your gym first, like put out content, run seminars. We never ran the podcast to like go viral. It was almost in the beginning, it was a resource for our clients more than anything else. So it's like, do that really, really well. That'll give you a reputation that you can then take that knowledge, skill set and expand it out into maybe the broader community.
Yeah. And we'll touch on the importance of networking, because we kind of danced around it there with your podcast, and then you're now getting invited to talk on different media streams as well. You can reach out to guys now such as Will Crozier and Dean McKillop and go, hey mate, can you come on my podcast? We're going to chat about this. And they just go, yes, because you've built that reputation and you've networked over the years. What would you suggest for young coaches in terms of networking and the importance of it?
Yeah, it's something that I dropped the ball on probably for 7 of those 9 years. It was just like, we just did our own thing, which had its own benefits. It meant that we were able to, I guess, maybe miss out on a few of the trends and stuff that happened in the fitness industry and kind of stay in our own lane a little bit and develop a product that we're really happy with now. But the flip side of that is like, yeah, I've got other friends that are in the industry that are like, oh, do you know such and such? You know, such and I'm like, nah, like I don't know anyone. But yeah, like you said, of late, like rubbing shoulders with guys like that is pretty humbling. But I think one of my favorite quotes actually because you've got me reflecting back on like the early days, it's actually from BPAC. It's just like, I want to be able to go to sit at any table and bring something worthy. So if you just get yourself in a position where like you mentioned Dean and Will, like they're just guys.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Will Crozier has the biggest neck in the fucking world and he can deadlift 400 kilos. And like, he's just a dude. Like, comes and hangs out. He stayed here and hung out and we've like talked about normal shit. And Dean and the Flex guys are all like really, really nice people as well. Like, I think we get in this space where we put people on a pedestal a little bit. It's like, just reach out to them. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. The ones that have time and respond and take time, like you'll be able to form relationships with it. You just can't take it personally if someone doesn't respond. Like, it is what it is. I've reached out to guys before that are just like it may be that in the kind of next tier. And it's like, yeah, I don't really have time to do that little thing. It's cool. I'll see you in a few years when you know my name and that we can go down that road maybe.
Yeah. And as you say, you can bring something valuable to the table of the discussion. They're going to want to go, oh, you know what? I'm going to jump in there.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I'll add to that, one thing that I've noticed that probably accelerated our networking a lot faster than anything else. When you go to stuff, ask questions.
Absolutely. I
don't know how many seminars I've been to that you get to the end and people go, has anyone got any questions? And the whole audience just sits there and I've presented them. And it's like, that's the most fun part of the day as a presenter, is like getting into the specifics and answering questions. As you guys can tell, I like to talk. So it's like, yeah, like that, I think set, particularly Jason and I of late, like a few seminars and stuff that we've been to, it's like you get that 15 minutes of one-on-one time with BPAC at a workshop with 80 other people, because you were the only one that asked 8 questions and no one asked any. So I think, yeah, putting yourself out there of like, with a willingness to learn. And that's what most people that are sort of in an education position want. They want to teach. That's why they're there.
Yeah. Well, when we started the Pat Davidson mentorship, I went through the whole mentor list. Like, I looked at every person's name on there and I go, do I know anyone here? And I identified one name in America, Sean Noriega. I'm like, yeah, I've heard of that guy. And then I saw your name. I'm like, Ben Scott, I know that name. Jamie's been on his podcast. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I'm going to start looking at his podcast. And I reached out to you and I said, hey, Ben, would you be interested in coming on this and just having this chat? And I was just throwing the line out there, and here we are. And it's been awesome. Big thanks to that, and really valuable answers that you gave us there. I'm looking forward to the discussion tomorrow night as well. I do have one more question. What is STC? What does that stand for? I've been trying to work it out. The STC part is.
So what we go with formally is strength training and composition. It's actually, I'm a total bogan. And I grew up in the car scene with my old man, and we used to run a website that was called Street Commodores. So when I first started personal training, I was like, I don't really know what to call this. I always knew that I was like, I didn't want to be limited to my name, and I didn't want coaching to be about me. So I was like, I didn't want that. So it's like, we had number plates that we had a few different cars, and they all started with STC. And I was like, fuck it, I'll just go with STC Fit.
I love that.
Yeah, we don't tell that story public very often because it's pretty embarrassing. But yeah, if anyone asks, it's strength training and composition.
You know what though? That story that gets people to resonate with you. They're like, oh yeah, just like your name now has that belief, that meaning for you, and it's something you'll fight tooth and nail to make into one of the biggest health and fitness, and your 1 million by 2030 goal that's awesome. Like, I love that you've put a number on it. We're going to the top. Everyone get out of our way or jump on board and we'll take you with us. Like, yeah, I love it, mate. And one more question from me before I throw to the audience, and this is a little selfish one. If you were going to recommend a podcast that I listen to, what's your go-to app that you tell people to go to?
I've heard there's a couple of guys that run one called STC Fit Learning.
No, one of your episodes.
An episode specifically?
Yeah.
For coaches?
Yeah.
I'll just go double check what number it was. It was a couple of weeks ago. Where are we? How to become an elite coach. So it's episode 110.
110. Excellent. Yeah. And what about an episode? Because I look at you and I go, this guy trains. You still compete, and you just look at your body and you go, this guy still trains. A few of us coaches, we don't look like you. So if you were going to send us on an episode that was based around training and give us all a kick up the bum, what episode would that be?
Okay. If you're into hypertrophy, the roundtable we did with Rawdon and Dean, was
Coach's Corner 2. That was.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
I think I need a bit of a hypertrophy about my life at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely like, I was pretty quiet in that one. Jace and the boys took care of that. I'm just having a look if we actually, talk about training sometimes. So episode 89, training variables that matter.
Episode 89. All right, I'm keen to get on top of those. I look forward to it. Your podcast is great. I'm going to throw out to anyone in the crowd now who might have a question for Ben. Dave, looking at you.
I have a question. You mentioned run your own business a bunch of times. But where did you learn how to do that? Was that through self-education? Did you have a mentor? Was it trial and error? It's pretty intimidating.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't. And that, I guess that's kind of why we do what we do now, is the whole concept of be what you wish you had when you were starting out. Most of us was just making mistakes. I had a business coach for a short period of time. I came from a sales background as well in gyms. It was very regimented in terms of contracts and agreements and all of that. So I sort of knew that side of things from there. So it was decent at sales and like getting people to buy into that sort of idea. Looking at the landscape now, my advice would be learn from someone who's already done it. That's where I would go. But the trouble with that at the moment is our industry in particular, for some reason, it only happens in fitness, I think. It's like we have people that have never achieved the outcome teaching other people how to do it. That doesn't make sense to me. So finding someone who's been in the game for quite a while, who's done it, who's whether it's through trial and error or they have like formal qualifications in business or whatever, that have actually put together successful businesses. Like, yeah, the biggest warning sign for me is like hashtag 6-figure business coach. It's like, I'm already out. If you had a really successful fitness business, I would already know who you are and you don't have to slide into my DMs and tell me. That would be how I'm going to pick someone that I want to learn from.
Yeah. Awesome. Cheers.
Yeah, I've definitely got a few questions here. I'll ask two and then I'll go to Jacob. Jacob's likely got a question as well. First one is, did you see your niche market evolve over time, or did you stay relatively headstrong with the type of clients that you wanted to work with when you first came into being a PT?
Yeah, so I worked with everybody probably for 5 years, and then my niche evolved naturally over time. And part of that was the gym I moved into. It was just the demographic of the gym matched perfectly with my interest at the time, which was like, yeah, I was still interested in body composition, but I'd moved into strength, was starting to powerlift myself. And then just kind of evolved from there. Resonated with those people. I found that even like my clients were meeting each other and getting along too. And I was like, okay, there's a little bit of a thing here that like these people are all pretty similar and they all resonate with my message and what I'm about. Obviously having that mindset element to it as well, maybe pushes a few of the guys away. They don't want to talk about mindset too much. They just want their sets and reps and off they go. So I think, yeah, for me, it just evolved naturally. And then now I think through confidence inside that space, the message I put out, I think is pretty consistent, I hope. So I tend not to have anyone outside of that scope even approach me anymore.
Yeah. It's like you attract the right amount of clients or the right client that you want based on the niche.
Next one is, I know Jared doesn't want to write to this one. Do you think specialists or generalists?
Your mic just went super crazy then, but I think you said, do you value being a specialist or a generalist?
Yeah. So,
yes. Oh, there we go. We're back. Yeah, I think. Are you guys like all S and like maybe just like show of hands? You guys are all S&C space, or are you personal trainers as well?
I'm PT/S&C coach.
Yes, I think as a personal trainer, early on, like I said, work with everybody. There's a point probably in my second year. I remember I had like a 15-year-old athlete, heaps of like fat loss clients, mums, like 20-somethings, 2 70-year-olds, a 65-year-old, all with different goals, all with different shit, all with different personalities. And like I probably learnt more from that group of people than I would learn from just training people that want to be good at deadlifting. So I think early days generalist is great, and you should have a good understanding across the board of all aspects that you need to know in your space and who you're going to work with. And then from there, get real good at the thing, whatever the thing's going to be. Like I'm pretty confident anyone in my niche comes to me, I'm 99.9% confident I'm going to get an outcome for them. So I think, yeah, once you've conquered that, I can tick all of these boxes, then we hone in on that thing that probably you're most passionate about, probably you enjoy the most and that your clients get the most out of. That's when you start to hone down for sure.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'll jump in with a question for you. Then I guess so I've listened to a few podcasts and coaches corners and everything, and so from my point of view, it seems like Jason's more that power, the bodybuilding kind of side of it, and now you're more like that powerlifting side of it. Originally, though, you were body comp. How did you find changing your clientele base into that powerlifting side when you, I guess, had the one generalist and then want to get more into powerlifting side now? Did you find like running your personal socials and that kind of stuff and posting more content, powerlifting content, created that change generally, or did you go about it a different way?
Yeah, I think like if you jump on my Instagram, it probably gives you the answer for that. It's like most people I train still want to look good. And I think it's interesting, like powerlifting is a hard space, man. Like I've heard the number be thrown around that like there's 1,000 people in Australia that actually compete in powerlifting. So then you kind of throw around that maybe there's 100, 200 coaches, like there's not that many clients per coach. So it's actually quite a hard market to get into, and definitely hard to dominate in. So for me, it was like I said earlier to Jared, just like finding people that were a bit interested in strength training, who wanted to look good as well, and then turn them into powerlifters like by accident without them sort of even knowing. It's like, hey, you know, those numbers you just hit for triples, if you did them on comp day, like you'd probably come like on the podium. And they're like, oh, it's like, do you want to do that? So we run like super chilled. We don't even call it a novice powerlifting meet. We just call it a lift off. So it's like, it's ran like a powerlifting meet. Like you do 3 attempts of 3 lifts and there's a judge, but outside of that, like there's no winner. You're just there for PBs. You don't have to wear soft suits or anything. It's like show up and lift, which I think exposes people to like the concept of it. So events like that have been really powerful for me. And then taking lots of photos of those as well. We do photo shoots as well. So it's like having girls that show up to a lifting event and then 4 weeks later do a photo shoot. It's like, oh, being a powerlifter doesn't mean I have to be fat. So it's like, yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit, when people say like powerlifting, it's probably not, like a lot of people nowadays probably know me as a powerlifting coach. Like you said, listening to the podcast, I talk about it a lot. And that's sort of the space I like to play in. And I've just kitted out my gym as my garage as a powerlifting studio. But like the idea, I think, of powerlifting has changed. And I think it's going to continue to go that way. I think CrossFit changed the map for all of that stuff. Olympic lifting, powerlifting, everyone's kind of done CrossFit, either got hurt or it was like not working for them anymore, but really liked picking shit up off the ground or squatting it. So it's like, oh, there's this powerlifting thing that I don't have to also be a gymnast and also be able to run a marathon that's appealing. And there's more and more powerlifting girls that also look great that compete in like bikini shows and stuff like that as well. So there's a cultural shift, I think, now that like it used to, I remember going to a nationals meet maybe 3-4 years ago of powerlifting. It was like, guys and girls eating like meat pies and chips and shit between attempts. Whereas now it's like you go there and it's like people have got muscle chef and like they're tracking macros on comp day now. It's like almost gone crazy the other way. So yeah, there's I've probably been lucky enough to ride that cultural wave. Yeah,
Definitely.
Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, no, I kind of get the idea of it. And I think it's just putting out the results, like you said earlier. Results speak for most of it. So putting out the results there and showing them like that lifting and what it can create is probably like the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky too that like selecting a market of girls that are in shape and that are strong. Like I don't have to be pretty, which helps. Like I just share what they do, and it doesn't reflect much really what I do. I like to post a little bit of my training just to be like, yeah, I do actually lift weights too. But if you can get into a position where the majority, I put up a post that upset a few people a while back. It's just like, if your coach posts more about their lifting and training than they do about their clients and education, you sponsored an athlete, you didn't hire a coach. Which not everyone kind of took so well, but look, that's the position I take with it. I'd much prefer to post my girls doing well than much more. I don't think there's any like 60 to 70 kilo girls walking around out there that want to see me squat 240. It's like, that doesn't appeal to them in terms of like their outcomes and their goals, like with neck rolls and neck veins and shit. It's like, it's not what they're looking for.
I guess stepping off that into the physique side a little bit, because that's like where my interest, I think, more lies. How did you go about early in your career getting your foot into the door into that physique show realm? Because obviously your Gen Pop aren't looking for physique shows. It's a very niche thing, and a lot of people who do want to compete will be looking for a very tried and trusted coach who knows exactly what they're doing and they've done it before. Did you go through like mentorships, internships, and that kind of realm, or did you find a different path in there?
I was really poor when I was like an early coach. Like Jared asked me before, like, what courses and stuff are you doing? Like, I couldn't afford courses. I'd like slept on a mattress on the floor. So anything free I could get my hands on, I'd ate up. So like every Lane Norton video, every Phil Loney podcast, anything I could do, I was on that was for free. However, I actually only co-coached one person to the stage back then. I'm a mediocre powerlifter and I was a much worse physique athlete. So the credibility thing there was probably a little bit tough. It built over time, and it was more like body composition. I attracted people that wanted to look good in a bikini, but not necessarily do that like 6 to 12 weeks further of dieting. I probably get more of that now. So I think, yeah, like walking the walk is definitely a part of it. And then, yeah, getting those client outcomes, pursuing them, and just talking about it all the time, showing you're passionate about it, showing you understand it. I think that's one benefit of social media that maybe we didn't have back then, because Jason and I we wanted to train physique athletes. We just didn't get many of them. Jason got more than me, but we just didn't get a lot at the time. Whereas now you've got the opportunity to not only just like what you look like in your PT shirt, but also get online and speak about it and show people stuff. And in your stories, in your posts, in whatever else, writing articles, all that sort of stuff that you can put out to show people you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, beautiful.
I'll jump in if you've got time, mate. You just, so based on Jake, you just kind of touched on Jacob's question with using social media and Instagram and stuff like that. And, you know, you mentioned that you kind of over the last 2 years have really kind of put on a big emphasis of doing your promotions about yourself and the business and your staff. For someone who's relatively quite new to the field of Instagram and stuff like that, and for new coaches and anyone who's trying to build a brand and I suppose build a reputation around the place. You mentioned that, you know, all the content that you originally kind of did was for your business, and you made a really good point about, you know, being really well known within the place that you currently work in. How would you, have you got any tips about of what you found has worked for getting your name out there in terms of circulating, you know, who you are and what you kind of do instead of just, you know, just posting random stuff and posting often? Like, are there any kind of small tricks of the trade that you found have worked in terms of developing your knowing, I suppose? So,
let's make this one actual, like tangible, go and do this tomorrow sort of thing. So that book, Key Person of Influence, has in it writing your pitch. And you can actually if you just search what's your pitch, Dan Priestley, it'll come up with a questionnaire. It'll tell you how to write one. Once you have that, it's basically establishing who you are, what you do, why you do it. The concept is you should be able to explain it to someone in under 30 seconds, 15 seconds, or talk about it for an hour. That's kind of the idea. If you're really into the thing that you do, like we're all sitting here and been on here for an hour just because I like to talk a lot. Sorry, Jared. So I would start with that. That's going to give you your quote unquote message. So then from there, it's just being about consistent what your message is. And something that we like to do for our newer guys is write down 30 problems that your client or that the person inside that pitch that they have. So it's like, say it's like basic stuff. Okay, so you struggle getting your protein in. Here's some tips to kind of meet your protein. Here's what I do, or here's what works for my clients, or whatever. Something super simple like that. Or it could be like, you get knee pain when you squat. Here's some ideas of what it could be. You get someone that watches that, applies the intervention. All of a sudden it's like, oh, Adam said that thing and it worked. He obviously knows what he's talking about. Or even just the perception that you're talking about it and it resonates with them, will put you in a position of authority with them anyway. So that's probably where I would start. And then in terms of like communicating your message, don't please everyone. Just please the people that you want to work with. So like me posting that, like we just talked about posting you sponsored an athlete, you didn't hire a coach. Like it's deliberately a little bit cheeky, not necessarily deliberately trying to call anyone out. Like I've got friends that post more about their training than they do their clients. I don't dislike them as people. We can just disagree on that as a strategy, but put out what you think. Don't try and be something to everyone. Just be the thing to the people you want to work with.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
No worries.
I have another question.
Yes.
So injuries unfortunately happen. It's sort of inevitable. And I was just wondering if you work closely with like a rehab team in particular or individuals, and also if you could give us any tips as to how you would recommend like the best ways in working with rehab practitioners to get the best out of it for your clients.
Yeah, this is actually super topical right now because I've actually just started working with a physio. So I've always struggled to find good allied health professionals. Like my whole career, we had a really good osteo that was sort of like, he could get people moving again and they felt great and allowed us to apply the interventions that we were aware of. And I was kind of at a point within my own career that it was like, okay, do I need to go down this rabbit hole and sort of be like a pseudo, especially being in like powerlifting, it's like niggles are common all the time. Do I want to be a pseudo physio and sort of understand anatomy and stuff to that level? It's like my coach is amazing with that. There's a couple of other high level guys that are really, really good at it. And then there's other guys that actually aren't. They just outsource and they're like, but if not some of the best in the world, but definitely some of the best in the country. So I was lucky enough. I'll give a shout out to Laura Fox from Fox Physio out in Seaford. We've been writing articles and stuff together now as well. In terms of finding someone, I think knowing and being comfortable to refer out is huge. So if you have, even if you sort of have a little bit of an idea, it's like, oh, okay, like you've got a bit of a hip pinch when you're squatting, might be a hip stability thing. Let's try this drill. Did that make it any better? Yes or no? Like you might have your own little interventions, but being able to say like, okay, this is beyond me now, go see someone. And understanding that that's actually a powerful position to be in as a coach, it doesn't show a weakness that like you don't have to know anything or everything, sorry. Working with someone, the reason I guess opened that door to work with Laura was I did their podcast and then I was heading out just for a treatment. And she's like, oh, can you send me a program the day before? And I was like, okay, you know what's going on. And then it was like, okay, we need to look at this, consider this in your program. I send clients now. It's like, okay, they need to do this type of exercise. If you're gonna do split squats, do them this way. If you're gonna load here, do it this way. Think about this in their warm-ups, that type of stuff. So that's what I would be looking for in an allied health professional that you're gonna partner with. 100%. And I think it's a super, super valuable thing. It makes life so much easier to have.
So like a lot of communication between the coach and the allied health professional. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to question the allied health professional. If they get offended, then probably find another one. And vice versa. Like be willing for a physio or whoever it is, the allied health professional, to question you and your programming and come to the table with problem solving it.
Thank you.
No worries. I'm kind of jealous. Just that, like, I was super excited because I got this like thing today. Yours looks better than mine. It's like way more.
Yeah,
flashy.
yeah. Gamer, streamer.
Yeah. I see. Yeah. I was like, I've finally made it into like the professional influencer leagues, and then your screen came up. I was like, oh damn.
I apologize. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll jump back in. So I think this one is kind of similar to along the same vein as what Adam was asking, but basically, when you are creating content, you said it's a good idea to be like controversial, cheeky, that kind of thing. I've sort of come to notice that like it's good to have polarity in your reputation. So when we talk about reputation before, it's like within like a pond of sharks, you want to in the ocean, you want to find blue water, and you want to have polarity against your competition. So how do you go about trying to find polarity, or do you agree with that statement?
It's a fine line to walk. Hey, I think there are people right now that are maybe their social media is more to impress other coaches than it is clients. And I don't think that's a very good way to get busy. I totally agree with the idea of polarity. I think sitting on the fence will get you nowhere, but I think faking it and trying to piss people off you'll be able to feel when it's disingenuous. Like I've probably even myself put up a couple that was just like, how do I stir the pot a little bit today was like the first thought, rather than like, this thing's kind of pissing me off. I need a way to like, I'm just going to vent it on Instagram because that's what we do these days. Was like, okay, so how do I convey that opinion and have it actually mean something to people as well? So I think as long as it's real and it comes from something that you care about and you're passionate about, staying measured, but yeah, being really clear in what you do. Like we got a ton of heat. I guess as a tangible example, we got a ton of heat when the first lockdown came out, because we just, across all of our social media platforms, all of our coaches, we just took a stance of like, you can still get results in COVID. And we got heaps of pushback because people were like, oh, you shouldn't be putting pressure on people. Like it's a hard time, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, we get it. But it's like, this is a thing that lots of people like to do. And they are being led to believe that they should just go on like some maintenance program for the next 6 weeks and give up on any chance of becoming a better athlete when they get back to the gym. So we went just like super hard on the other side of that because that's what we believed in. That's what we cared about. So I think, yeah, make sure you're not creating polarity just for the sake of it. It's got to come from something that you're actually passionate about, that you want to draw a line in and say like, this is how things should be done.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying if you're in a party and you say, oh, shit, a group of people are going to say like, yeah, it's shit, and then a bunch of other people be like, no, that's whatever. But the people that agree with you and say like, yeah, that's one issue, they're the ones that are going to align better with your brand and the ideal type of ideal, basically.
Yeah, and even the ones that thought you were shit, thought that that sport was shit, will be like, fuck, do you David talking about how shit that was? So they're still talking about you.
Yeah, and it's just exactly.
Yeah,
that's what you want. Yeah. Question about a few more questions. I can see you got a library behind you. How important have you seen your own personal self-development benefit your coaching and your business?
Yeah, so I'm huge on personal development. One of my favorite lines is, your business will only grow as much as you do. So I think, yeah, I actually have like a checklist up here that has 30 minutes read or listen of personal development, 30 minutes read or listen of business development, and then 30 minutes read or watch education. And that's kind of a target across most days. It's just kind of invest that time, because I think, yeah, opening up your own personal development will, one, give you strategies to work with people as well, like that we talked about coaching earlier, and actually communicating and understand and empathizing and all of that with people. but just being able to manage different things more effectively, knowing yourself, knowing what triggers are for you. Like when things piss you off with a client, it's like, why does that piss you off? Are you taking responsibility for things? Like all of that stuff, I think is really, really powerful. I really like extreme ownership. Jocko Willink is a really good one, a good example of that. Like my entire Audible is probably a 50-50 split between personal development and business development. So yeah, I invest in it hugely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've got bulk self-development. All right, last question, I promise. This is one about you and Jace. How do you see the differences between you and Jason that have created a symbiotic relationship that has created the success of STC Fit?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's probably narrowed now. When we first started working together, Jace had absolutely no business nous, but he was a really good trainer. I was a pretty shit trainer, but I understood sales and business far better than he did. And I was probably had more ideas about doing stuff as well, like putting together. We used to run like muscle camps in the gym. It was like a boot camp, but bodybuilding. Like things like that were probably my skill set, but Jace's ability to put the programs together and stuff were way better. He's far better in the intellectual side of things than probably I am. But in terms of, like business and concepts and systems, it's probably my strength. So we work hand in hand. We actually have a third director as well, who's kind of never spoken about because he's not on the podcast, which is my old man. And he actually runs all of the back end, and Jason and I would be absolutely useless without him. So like running our finances, tax, dealing with like all the grants and stuff through this, contracts, managing payments and clients and all that sort of stuff. He runs all that for us as well. So between the three of us, we all kind of connect pretty well. I think, we've never actually yelled at each other. I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 semi-disagreements, and usually they were miscommunications. So I think, getting along personally pretty well has also helped. And we built up over a long period of time as well. Like, I don't know if I would, like going into opening the gym in particular, it's like, obviously I've known my dad my whole life. But I've like been working with Jace for the best part of 10 years. So it's like, I'm pretty comfortable going into something like that with him. But I think, like we're talking about earlier, like networking and stuff, if you find people you connect with, just put things out to do stuff. Like, instead of just like, hey, how are you? Like, maybe do something together, put an article together, jump on an Instagram live together, just like take that relationship a little bit further, professionally at least, and stay in that loop a little bit more, I think is maybe a valuable tip as well. If you're looking for like someone that'll complement you, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a business partner. It can be like just lots of people around the place.
Awesome. Great questions there again, Dave. I'm going to start contacting you before I do these things and pick your brain, because you always come up with some good ones. Ben, thank you very much for giving up your time today, answering our questions. It's if you change one person's ability to coach or think and develop their business, I think you've made a positive change. And I think with this chat, you're going to change a lot of people's ability to build their business, because you've given us some really valuable tips there. I look forward to tomorrow night. It's gonna be
it should be fun.
Yeah.
Try and stir Jamie up.
Yeah.
Talk to him about stability or something. See how we go.
He's in the background. He can hear you. Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Ben, thank you again. I will chat to you tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.